me know when
Oh, it's rolling.
it's rolling?
So, yeah.
Perfect. Hi everyone, thank you for being here and listening to our project, which is Mindhood.
Yeah. Morning. I'm Fabio. I'm from Brazil. Just to quickly introduce myself, I have 20 years of teaching experience, and I have been managing large-scale public and private programs, especially in the most violent communities named favelas in Brazil. And what drives me for Mindhood is because I have been seeing a great disconnection between schools and communities. So this is something we need to address.
And my name is Leiny. I was born and raised in LA, and I came into OT with experience in STEM and maker education and really wanted to address the opportunity gaps that we have, specifically when it comes to active learning and design opportunities, and also the lack of culturally sustaining curriculum in our schools. So Fabio and I came together with these concerns and really wanted to see how we can improve the learning experience of high school students, in particular of low socioeconomic status or low SES. And we're going to start taking you back to high school. So remember these mission statements. You probably had them all around your school as well. So here's a sample one. All students will graduate college ready, empowered with the knowledge, skills, and passion to positively impact their own lives, community, and the global society, right? So we decided to dig deeper on these three elements over here: community, empowerment, and positive impact. And we sent out a survey to our connections in LA and Brazil, and we were able to receive around 50 responses from each. And this is what our survey said. So we asked in our survey if students have ever had the opportunity to just create, design, or build something for their neighborhood, which are elements of active learning. And as you can see here, a very low percentage of students feel like they have had that opportunity. At the same time, there was this quote over here: "What I learned in my school is my future, and my community is just my present," is a theme that resonated with a lot of other students' responses. And it really just shows that there's a disconnection here between what students are learning in school or what they're doing and sort of the community that they're living in. But, of course, students are opinionated and they're very aware of what is happening in their communities. We gave them a chance to really tell us what are matters that they care about. And these were the top three that came up for the US and the top three that came up for Brazil. But the students are not really feeling empowered to act upon their communities. We asked the students how much change they feel they can cause in their neighborhood, and as you can see, they don't have that. They don't feel like they can do much for their neighborhoods. And we also asked them to propose something that they would like to see in their neighborhood. And as you can see here, when asked them how confident they feel about pursuing that, if they were willing to act on that, the confidence level should be higher than that. So we asked ourselves, are students really being equipped to have that, promote that positive impact in their communities and global societies as we see in the high school mission statements? And more importantly, are we promoting the right kind of civic engagement within our students? So we looked into research for that because obviously our small sample of 100 students is not enough to generalize to the rest of the world. But even research is showing that most programs are not really helping students to think critically about their surroundings and think about social change. And it's really promoting this very conservative and individualistic view of citizenship. And you can see that with our students as well. Like they do say yeah, I do community service, I fulfill my volunteering hours, but they acknowledge that it's really just to look good in college applications, not really to help them understand what is happening in their community and so on. And of course, this issue, the state of civic engagement now, is cascading into bigger issues. So there is a civic empowerment gap in the US where low SES individuals in general don't have much opportunity or resources to really create a powerful civic identity and also really learn how to craft a voice in this nation and really vouch for whatever change that they want to see in their communities. And of course, in a time where education is pushing towards a student-centered approach where a student has to be very confident and have that agency to pursue tasks that they're caring about, it's really important to address this matter, particularly for our low SES students. So we address these following needs for our students. The first, that students really need to have that connection between school and their real world context, and we're saying there because we acknowledge that students are contextualizing subjects, but it's really contextualizing in a world where students oftentimes don't even see themselves in, right? We see, you know, a lot of cool initiatives of students pretending to be scientists, but we need to take a step back and have them understand how knowledge can be something they can use in their everyday lives and view it as a tool, a powerful tool. Also, students need to, of course, think critically about their surroundings and be able to go beyond the surface. And students need to be able to go from being really opinionated about what's happening to really act upon whatever it is that they want to see. And we asked ourselves and challenged ourselves really to how can we create a better opportunity for the youth to think critically about their neighborhood and feel empowered to make a change. So essentially, how might we transform the youth's neighborhood into a powerful learning environment?
Yeah, so Leiny and I have been in this last hectic 2 months developing MyHood, which we now introduced to you, which is a mobile platform to help youth to analyze and formulate what we call opportunities for change. How do we envision MyHood working? That's our theory of change. So as Leiny said, adolescents already have simple awareness of problems, of things that happen in their neighborhoods. But we need to move them from the simple awareness to a more complicated type of awareness, which is spatial awareness, knowing where exactly things are happening. And even beyond spatial awareness, we need to introduce them to the basics of design thinking, which is, let's say, uncovering the reasons behind some of the things they see. More than design thinking, we should introduce them to the cousin of design thinking, the systems thinking, which is what are the correlations for the emergence of phenomena in a given community? Why are they happening all together? So that the adolescents can frame opportunities for real impact and we can develop their agency. We want them to understand what they can and even what they can't do by scoping down problems. So more than simple awareness, we want them to develop a different level of awareness. We want them to learn different means of engagement to their communities, different than regular civic classes, civic engagement classes. And we need them to develop self-agency by understanding real tools to engage with opportunities for change. So let's imagine that we're not in the GSC, we're back in high school. We are in a geography class, let's imagine. That's not a very fun imagination. Okay, but let's just imagine. So that's a classroom in which the teacher asked the students to research about their physical spaces. The teacher, the geography teacher, wants the students to better understand their physical places. So he asks the students to access MyHood, the platform. They go online, they access it, it's online for everyone. They create a profile, and the first thing is they form teams by, let's say, people that live in the same region. So that's the first thing they'll see, a map, the classic blue dot, same visual language as Google does, Google Maps does, and they will select a theme. Let's say they select trash. Okay, we want to better understand how trash works or is happening around my neighborhood. So, okay, students will see some data points. They are pre-populated by people who used the platform before, so it's a collective crowdsourced map. Very quickly, these are powers. We call this type of data point powers, so they are resources analyzed, and the other type of data point is a target, is an opportunity for change. So let's say the student clicks in one to check what other students or users are saying, and they will see, oh, okay, someone visited an NGO and saw that the director of this NGO says that trashing is more behavioral than just infrastructural. It deals with the behavior of people and not just the availability of trash cans. Okay, so days later, one of the students is in a park, and he sees someone trashing something on the ground. Oh, that's horrible. why is this happening? And he goes and he wants to say, there are no trash cans around. It's an infrastructural. So he clicks here and, oh, it's not just one data point. Oh, someone did something bad. We want them to think. So we created some scaffolding questions. So what maybe they saying or feeling? Yes, maybe the student will need to talk to people and interview people. Did you learn something that made you think differently about the theme? Oh, yes, I saw the other post about the behaviors around trashing. Okay, I'll post this as a target. Okay, the target is here. And then the group of students start reading all the data points, making connections, the deadline is approaching, and they decide to create a call to action, which is symbolized by this hand, the hand of power. So again, a series of scaffolding questions. What bigger story do targets and powers tell you? There's a series we're showing one, boom, call to action posted, and the call to action is on the map. We think it's very important to have the call to action in a place, stagnant place. That's an example. How can we motivate people to throw trash away? So they go back to the geography classroom and they can debate with the colleagues and with the teacher. That could be a geography class or a maker class or any other actually subject could make use of this. So you might be thinking, oh, I saw something like this somewhere before. Yes, you surely saw the use of maps, tools that use maps, but we think this is a unique approach because this is not only about maps. So in our case, maps are being used to create spatial awareness and systems thinking, but in order to allow adolescents to formulate problems, we are using a design thinking inspired approach. It's the basics of design thinking to foster the collaboration between users. We have different social features, and we want to push away from this deficit negative view of communities. So why maps? Because we know they are a powerful way to visualize data. They provide what we want, spatial awareness, and we have been digging into research, and researchers say that they do empower common, real people in their communities. Very quick story, it's 1854 now in this room, and if you just believe in the assumptions, you will die of cholera, I'm sure. It's dark, right? So, in just one single street, Broad Street in London, 127 people died of cholera in 3 days. And you know what people think the reason is? Oh, it's just the air. There's a bad thing in the air. So let's go to France, James, right? Or let's go to the New World. So people just moved to other airs. So this guy named John Snow, the other John Snow, he built this map. So he pointed all the cases of people who died of cholera around Broad Street. He mapped all the cases. And he found out that there was a connection. One contaminated a pump. They didn't know about germs yet, but he discovered that this pump was contaminated. But in order to do this, it was not just mapping. He had to go there and interview people and talk to people to discover. So it's not just mapping, it's the basics of design thinking. It's a human-centered approach. He empathized with people. He was not like the other officials who said, oh, I'll not go to Broad Street because they're dying there. He went there. So he went beyond visible symptoms and beyond the common assumptions of the time. And more than that, in our platform, going back to my hood, we want them to drop pins of powers, resources, allies, the targets, and the call to actions, which are important to be on a map. In a nutshell, we know this is good for students. It can be used by students outside of the school in any context, but we also think that it can be originated by a teacher. So that there are 2 points of entrance. And good for communities because it's more eyes, more hands, and a potential reduction of biases. Well, that was a simulated case. Now, Leiny, could you tell us about our real tests, real people?
Yes, so we did test the very general concept with high schoolers. We had 5 studies with groups of 2 to 3 high school students. And so they did an individual, they individually completed a pre-survey that has similar questions as we had in the online survey, but together we did an activity and did a post-qualitative interview. So because of the very limited time, we only have 15 minutes with the students, it's obviously not enough time to have students go out there and find insightful stories and see whether our scaffolding process for that works. We just wanted to see if the general process does something different for the students. So we asked ourselves whether the process, how it impacts our thoughts about these call to actions and targets and powers, what kind of further scaffolding we might need to include, any takeaways, and just in general their opinion on how they feel about this platform. So first we had students on Post-it notes just write down general themes. We framed them as opportunities to action on opportunities for change on purpose, because we don't want them to just think that they're just posting problems on their community and promoting that deficit view that Fabio was saying about their community. Just any opportunity for better, for change, whether it be improvement or addressing certain issues. So they brainstormed them on that Post-it, and we gave them a printed map of their community and markers for them to annotate onto it on their powers and their targets, and just like discuss what exactly they were putting on there. So again, because of the 15 minutes, all the conversations were based on what they already know about their community. But it was really interesting to see the stories that they came up. So one that my favorite conversation was students that were annotating themes for homelessness and crime. And they kind of brought up this assumption saying, like, wherever there's homelessness, there must be crime. They kind of gave that, that hypothesis. And after mapping to the best of their knowledge where they see high points of crime and homelessness, they noticed that they were very separate events. So it really reduced that bias, in particular against homelessness, that wherever they see something bad, there must be like everything bad that's going on there. So that's just an insight on what the powerful stories that maps promoted. Then after that, we gave them a paper with tables that had the scaffolding questions for the call to action and create their statements on what they feel like they should do for their communities. And in general, they found the students gave positive feedback about the process. Again, it didn't really give them further insights, but they felt like it really helped them figure out what they did and didn't know about their community. The content on the map, we noticed, really drives the conversation, and we need to see whether that could be limiting or really good. But what I mean is that maps already have titles of certain facilities, for example, the city hall and this and that. And a lot of students really depend on what was already on the map, so it really comes to question, does it actually promote conversation or does it limit them to specific insights? And students, even though they liked this idea, they were very skeptical of how practical it was. They already feel like they have a lot to do, they're high school students, and they don't really see this being a part of their lives the same way other apps are. So our next steps are to really test this prototype in a more realistic time frame. So as Fabio mentioned, we ideally view this being used for long periods of time, about a week or a month, for students to really go out there and have the chance to go into their communities and really test that part. We really want to design a way for schools to take these how might we's and transform them into curriculums that they can use in their schools. We really want to promote the formation of teams. So in the end, students can choose to team up based off what matters or how might we's they come up with, but really to help them push forward as a team, not feel like they're just coming together to just like discuss things, but really move forward with that. And of course, our prototype right now is very limiting, but we would like to add more features such as the annotations that students did in real life with markers, looking across themes, the same way with homelessness and crime that we did in our learner studies, adding more social features and having sort of a live feed to show students that there's action going on. Another reason why we have them pin those call to action so that they can see like not only are there targets and some things that are happening, but really to see that there are other kids like me that are doing something about it. And so we would love to thank our powers who helped us create our My Hood, and thank you very much for listening.
Everyone's so polite.
Somebody's got to go first.
Someone's got to go first, and then the ball will begin. Great presentation, super tight, and process also felt really nice and tight. The one thing I'm kind of aware of is how born this is out of your passion, and how sometimes that might create a blind spot in terms of actually connecting to real motivation. So I really appreciated actually at the end, you're kind of like, but. And there were questions from you. We've been doing a lot of work with high school students and in schools, and motivation is like really a really important question. And I don't mean motivation. I mean actually motivation to stick with it, right? So you can assign something to be used, but to really get something out of it. And I think you might at this point like be making assumptions about some of those motivations. So I feel like as you continue to really dig into that, and then think about a solution that can be born out of those motivations. And then with that, it may not be that school is your place where this happens. I could imagine that there are existing programs, sort of like Boy Scouts, that might actually connect more deeply to that dialogue already, where you could actually be integrating tools that provide more value, and that like sort of more naturally integrate. And so kind of broadening your context of thinking about where kids are and how there are interactions with others that could lift and leverage the kind of civic engagement that you're talking about. But obviously it's like a really great problem space, and I think sort of opening up to like kind of the broader system of where youth are and how they connect in the world will help you think about really refining the solution.
No, yeah, it's definitely something we need to look into. We've thought about leveraging the fact that students are already trying to do so much for college and really try to frame this in a way as an opportunity to maybe it could be part of their service hours, maybe it could be doing something like that that would help them kind of leverage that idea that everyone's doing this for their own reasons, and help them realize that this could be another way of engaging to their community like that.
One thing, just to kind of, just one more little build, is we helped create this design contest for middle school students a little bit younger, but that's now happening in 60 countries, and like millions of students are doing it. And it's most successful in countries where there's nothing else to do, right? So in America, actually that contest is not finding its sea legs, because it's just the kind of abundance of options for young people is so big. Yeah. And there's something there that's why I kind of say tune into maybe like the systems that already exist where students are engaged, and then think about how you could help lift what they're doing. Because adding a new thing into like a high abundance space is kind of difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, just along these lines, going back to Brazil. In Brazil, you don't have the portfolio for college. So people do not need to do any type of community service to get accepted. It's just grades, which is also bizarre. So I saw many maker or creative education sessions in the favela that were totally disconnected to the community's problem. So it's like, oh, let's create a robot, let's create something crazy, but we don't have electrical energy outside, so we don't have anything outside. So places in which I see this disconnection, I can see this happening. Either in a Boy Scouts association or in a school. But I think you're right in terms of motivation. It needs to be driven by someone before it's widespread and naturalized. Just the students just use it.
Like that's why we really also want to cater this to teach, or any educator that's already doing these problem-based learning type of courses they're making, which is like growing in education. And really help them understand like what their students are interested in and try to bring that into making. Because like making is so powerful, but I do also see a disconnection. Like we're having students imagine that they're scientists and like see how science is applied there, but they don't see themselves as scientists yet. They don't see how that's relevant to what their lived experience is every day. So we just wanted to kind of also bridge that gap to the growing field of like problem-based learning and so on and so forth. So yeah, there's a lot of multifaceted players behind our motivation, but definitely we need to do better in seeing how to better implement this.
I just want to pick up on, because I agree with like the input of like where do you start and like how do people get involved in this. But I think thinking about where both of you came from and thinking about this work, one challenge is, so particularly historically marginalized youth, at least in the United States, do less of the outside Boy Scout, Girl Scout kinds of opportunities than everybody else, right? Like I think then like a wider middle class kind of population. And so there's studies on kind of out of school time and how kids spend time. And I think this speaks to this civic empowerment gap, right?
Yes.
That if this is about creating an ethos of engaging with the public and participating in those spaces, and you're trying to target, you know, a working class community, the schools are probably the route to get into it, and those are also the places that are most impacted by other kinds of pressures on what achievement looks like in the school. So it's a double challenge in that sense. The other thing that I was thinking, I really appreciate this work, and it's been useful seeing it grow over the past few months. And what I'm thinking about is, and you got to this at the end, Leiny, of, you know, in what ways does this platform possibly create feelings of disempowerment, right? So if I were to go onto the theme and I wanted to look at homelessness in my community and see that there's no other powers or targets on there because I'm one of the early users of this resource, right, then I really feel like I'm alone in this space, or there's no one else who's really thinking about this. Or likewise, if I make a call for action and don't see other people engaging in that call for action, also how does that shape, you know, the sense of identity, right? So just thinking about what are the metrics for getting people to move to act, and maybe this is what teams look like. And then part of that is also the powers and targets are probably tied to the resources of that community, right? So you can look at Pokemon Go and geocaching as like popular mobile-based apps that have less opportunities in urban communities than they do in wealthier and suburban spaces, right? As where those disparities might show up. But I'm excited about where this will go. Yeah.
Thank you for making that.
And actually, your name should be here.
Oh,
That's my bad. Your help is a lot.
Of course.
Thanks.
So, let's see. So Leiny, as you said, would you say a lot of multifaceted passions behind this?
Yeah.
Is that what you said? Yeah. And so I think that sort of my overall sort of reaction is there's a whole bunch of really interesting high-level sort of conceptual drivers behind this, right? And you touched on the maker movement, you touched on communities, you touched on students not feeling connected to their communities or not feeling as if they're learning. So there's all these different things, right? And so for me, you know, so the question is, how do all of those high-level things actually connect at a tactical level? And how are you going to measure outcomes, right? How are you going to measure effectiveness? And I'm sure you've already given a ton of thought to this. But that's not exactly clear to me yet. Maybe it's not clear to you either.
Yeah, in terms of measurement, I wouldn't say that we've discussed like specific measures, but definitely I guess it does start with like motivation, like whether or not students really see this as a way to connect to their communities. I think
Right.
that's our first important priority.
Right.
And then from there to go on to more academic and how well are they creating these insights, how well are they really understanding their community.
Right.
But yeah, I would say the first one would be motivation. And how it all connects together, I mean, that's a whole other conversation that we can have. But to me, it's more of just really having a space for students to, like, to me, it's really to see how knowledge is not only this, like, it's not for, like, just getting a job. Like, to me, it's really just, knowledge is a powerful tool that really should be more connected to how they can really bring this to home, and
Right.
and it comes down to the fact that like low SES students don't have those kinds of opportunities, and just create this sort of very superficial view of knowledge in a way, and I really want them to see how powerful it really can be. I guess that's really like the one thread to me, how it all connects to everything. I don't know if that.
Yeah, I would also measure engagement, how much they use, how many
Yes.
data points, how many calls to action, how many people are engaging with someone else's calls to action. And I would measure how much they are using the prompts, because the prompts are optional. So if they're just tagging things, just dropping things.
But those are more metrics around the product itself and less about outcomes. And at the end of the day, what we're going to care about is outcomes.
Internal measures, yes.
There you go.
Yeah.
So I guess then that begs the question of as I said, I love all the aspirational stuff you guys talked about. It's all awesome, right? But at the end of the day, it's a matter of, how does that connect to something that actually results in outcomes, right?
Oh, I see.
And so if I were to ask you sort of in one sentence, what do you want the outcomes to be? Is it lower high school dropout rate? Is it just people feeling more connected? Is it, so what do you, and maybe you do have different answers, but what do you think you want, if you were to pick one thing that you want the desired outcome to be, what do you think it would be?
You go first.
So for me, adolescents understanding more deeply and getting engaged with the problems of their communities.
So there's people being more engaged with their community.
Yeah, that's
Great.
Yes, and to me, it's more of, I really feel, like, especially communities, I need to, where students, I really want students to feel like they can, to have the ability to formulate their own problems, not just be given a challenge and solve it, but really kind of frame their own interests into, and take action on that, and to kind of cascade into this idea that, there's a lot of companies that try to help these kind of communities, but they don't understand their communities. Really, the approach is to teach these communities to create their own voice and their own craft, and be the ones to be designing, be the ones creating the programs really needed to uplift it. I think that's the real motivation behind everything. But as to a more short-term outcome, it would be for students to just really take more action and not necessarily take on a huge initiative, but when they notice something in their community, they can either go to their school and really, whether it be through the maker spaces, whether it be to find a way to they feel they can do something about and get used to the idea that not everything's intact, not everything is permanent. You can cause change, you can promote change, and move on from that. Really, I guess that would be the short term. But I don't know if that is answering your question.
No, that's great.
But
So the observation is that I can imagine a way to measure Fabio's desired outcome.
yeah.
It's not yet clear to me how we would measure your desired outcome.
Okay, so a way to measure that would be, it would be, I guess, tied into how engaged they would be in their communities. How much they're feeling like they're willing to take action on
Great.
whatever they're noticing. Yeah.
Awesome, thanks.
thank you.
Okay.
Good job, guys.